This is Star vs. the Forces of Evil, episode 4A, Cheer Up Star. An episode which starts off with one of those cheesy, overdone, oh my god, the heroes are in a desperate situation that they might not get out of. Let's flash back in time and see how they got into this predicament kinds of openings. Which is fine, you just see them done pretty often, and granted, this episode did do it a little bit differently than most, where most shows typically have this type of opening to signify an actual dramatic episode with real dramatic stakes. This episode wasn't like that at all. In fact, this was one of the best comedy episodes of the show so far, and one of the funniest episodes of television I've seen in a very long time. The plot goes that Marco and Star are being pushed back by Ludo's monsters and take refuge in Marco's shed, where they try to build armor to help themselves to survive the fight easier. And we get a flashback to how they ended up in this situation to begin with, because the monsters are actually managing to push them back this time for the first time. And essentially what happened is, after Marco had a really bad day where the world just decided to take a big smelly crap on him, he missed the bus, then he ran into the bus, then he had his shirt ripped off, then he fell into garbage on school picture day, then he broke his crush's skateboard. There was probably more in there, but I just don't remember. There was so much of it so fast, and it was so funny. But after all this happens, Star takes time out of her day to cheer him up. So when Star meets a boy that she likes, played by Napoleon Dynamite, which, yeah, no, that's not his real name, but the point is, it was Napoleon Dynamite, and that was fantastic. She meets him and gives him her number, and he doesn't call her, and it really depresses her, and so Marco tries to do the same thing. He tries to cheer her up, which eventually culminates in him luring a bunch of monsters to Earth for her to fight, not realizing that he'd lured so many, because from his experience, there is nothing that Star enjoys more than beating up monsters. And of course, at the end, even after they had been pushed back by the monsters up to this point, they get out of the situation pretty easily. This episode was just so genuinely fun from beginning to end. There were so many laughs. I mentioned the Marco's Bad Day segment was hilarious. It was really short compared to the rest of the episode, especially considering that this was only an 11-minute episode, and yet there was superb escalation from one thing to the next throughout the entire scene. It was absolutely hysterical. And then we jump right into Star trying to cheer him up, and it was one of the funniest segments I've ever seen. The scene where she gets herself stuck in the fish was hysterical. It was just so absurd that you couldn't help but laugh at it. And then when Marco was trying to cheer her up, and we got the scene of him launching himself throughout her room on a rocket, and we didn't actually get to see what was happening to him, but the fact that we couldn't see it, and we could only see Star's reactions and the random debris coming down from the ceiling made it all the more funny. I obviously can't go into detail because so much of this was visual, and even if I did go into detail, all I do was spoil the superb comedy of this episode, so I recommend wholeheartedly that you go watch it. It was so good and demonstrated that the crew working on this show understands comedy so well. They tackled so many different forms of comedy and animation in this episode and nailed all of it. The animation in this show is already incredibly impressive to me. The fact that there's always some movement somewhere on the screen at all times. The characters are so expressive. The movements can be so exaggerated and fluid, and yet so tight and precise. It reminds me of like a Tex Avery cartoon or something, and I'm absolutely loving every second of it. I like the show, I like the characters, but overall my favorite thing about this show is the animation, at least so far. And this episode did a really good job of helping to solidify why that's the case. And even after cramming so many different forms of visual comedy into the episode and doing them so well, there was even a little bit at the end where they managed to humanize the villains ever so slightly, which was very welcome in such a short-form show. I don't know how they had the time for that, but they did, and it worked. I know that the show is going to get very plot-driven eventually, and that's something I should be looking forward to, but here I am, all the way back at episode 4, and I'm just hoping for more episodes like this one. Hopefully we get more episodes like this one before we start getting those heavier episodes down the line, because I really loved this. Plot-wise, though, there's really not a whole lot to say about this one. Nothing really happened. This episode existed for the gags, which is perfectly fine. In an episode like this, with gags like this, that's almost necessary, and again, it worked so well, I find literally no reason to complain about it. Again, I am looking forward to the more plot-driven episodes later down the line, but episodes like this one are certainly welcome as well. But as per usual, I'd like to ask, guys, if you have seen this episode, what did you think of it? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. Either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later. Oh, and hey, before I forget, I think it's worth mentioning that it is thanks to this episode that I have a new ringtone.